Greetings, friends of the Great Second Advent Movement, and welcome once again to the Present Truth Studies YouTube channel. I'm your host, Brother Eric. I've been absent for a while, a few distractions in life. There have been requests to return to the Sabbath school lesson quarterly. This week I'll try to get back and at least cover the last two or three at the end of this quarter. I think lessons 11, 12, 13. And then it will conclude at the end of this quarter in the end of June. And then we're getting ready for the biggest thing probably in over a decade, maybe in the history of the Adventist Church, is the upcoming General Conference session in St. Louis, Missouri, that will be held from July 3 to July 12. We will have representatives there on the street to share the Present Truth message with you. So what I'm going to do today and in the next several videos is do some preparation about what to expect for those that are going to be attending the session either on the Sabbath or maybe the whole time or so forth. But we'll be out there in the streets, what you can expect. And what I'm going to do today is share a rare treat. The first session I attended was 20 years ago. This very time, 2005, the session was held amazingly at the same location in downtown St. Louis, Missouri. So I was there first time to see what was going to go on. So I was just investigating. I was checking things out. So I took pictures. So I'm going to give you a slideshow today, an inside view of what things look like on the street and during that session 20 years ago. Here it is 20 years later. So I think this will be a rare treat. And then probably next week we will do, I also attended sessions in Atlanta, Georgia in 2010, and the last full session, 2015, San Antonio. So I'll share you some pictures from those sessions in another video. So I think this will help you get an idea of what to expect on the street, but also for those that are not able to attend, it will give you an idea of what it's like to be at a session. And furthermore, we'll have representatives there in the street. We're going to be recording some video and trying to upload maybe every day, but at least every other day, about things that are going to happen during this upcoming sessions. There's a lot of expectation, a lot of uncertainty. I think it has the potential to be as monumental as even potentially the historic 1888 session in Minneapolis. Because the church is clearly in a crisis. There's so many controversies, about the COVID crisis, the mandates, the jabs, the religious liberty crisis, pastors being fired and muzzled, voices muzzled, the ADRA crisis, United Nations being in league with the world. All of these things are boiling under the pot, so to speak. But the session is probably not going to deal with it because the agenda is very much controlled. But don't think for a second that out in the hallways and out in the streets that Seventh-day Adventists aren't going to be talking about these things. So this is where the real news is going to come from. So we'll be reporting there from the session on the street. We'll have people there for the whole time. So I hope you will find this useful, and we'll be posting that content here on this channel. So please subscribe if you haven't, or let people know. You'll get some inside reporting from the street on the upcoming GC session. So we appreciate your time. Now come on in with me. I'll give you an overview of the layout of the land, and then I'll go into a slideshow of what happened session 2005, 20 years ago. So come on in and join me. Here we are as a 3D overview from Bing Maps of downtown St. Louis, and you can see here the famous arch, the Mississippi River, the downtown buildings, the skyscrapers. That's where a lot of the hotels are, where the delegates and the big shots will be staying close by. And then on the north end there, you see the Dome of America Center. That's the football stadium, the Edward Jones Dome. That's where the session will be held. And adjoining it on the west side is the exhibition area, the convention center. So everything takes place there. So we're going to zoom in on this, the 3D view. And you see there's the dome, the Edward Jones, that's the football stadium. That's where the Sabbath meetings will be held. The session meetings will be held. Next to it, the convention center, you see the square with a hole in the middle. That's the parking area, one of the parking areas. Of course, there's other parking out there. And then you see this entryway that's kind of an L shape, and that's where all the buses will come in and unload people. So there's a lot of activity here. So I'm going to show you pictures. You'll see a lot of pictures of this area where this little entranceway and in front of that parking structure. I'm going to be showing you pictures of people out on the street. There's also, of course, other entries on the corners of this Edward Jones Dome. This one out here in the front, on the Sabbath, there's almost 70,000 people that will be in that stadium. They come pouring out to have their fellowship meal. This little green area, you can see the kind of the parallel stripes in it. That will be packed full of people. And, of course, the other entrances. Yeah, this is the layout of the land. I'll zoom in a little bit more. You see there this parking lot. That's a private parking lot because there is, I think, an apartment complex here. So that's won't be accessed. But on the outside of that, I'm going to zoom into this little semicircle here. That's where people go into the exhibition area. Okay, so a lot of people will park in that garage, so you'll see activity in front of that parking garage. And then this corner where you see some of the trees, there's going to be a lot of pictures along there and along these sidewalks. So that's where most of the action takes place. Not that there won't be things that take place on the outer peripheries. On the back side, there's a parking structure. I think there's a Holiday Inn. There will be sometimes ministries will have their meetings over there, but they get some traffic, but not near as much as this locus here, this L shape. That's where most of the action. And then out in the front here, this green area with trees will be populated with a lot of people. So that gives you an overview of the territory. Now we'll go into the slideshow. This is what I experienced my first time for a session 20 years ago. So let's go check this out. So at the time, I didn't have a lot of money, so I parked out on the street. And as I was walking in towards the session area, I attended over 2 different Sabbaths. So I think this is probably a Friday. I came in and I saw this car parked on the street. And I took a picture, and it's kind of a ratty, painted-over vehicle. But it was advertising, I'll zoom in, Healing on Wheels, Hear the Prophetess. So it's obviously a local prophetess. And this is kind of set the stage. I'm going to introduce you to a few bona fide, face-to-face false prophets. And I'll tell you the story behind them. Now, we know as Seventh-day Adventists that we recognize the ministry of Ellen White is the spirit of prophecy, is a latter-day prophet. So clearly there are counterfeits. I never met this person, but I just thought it was interesting, a local prophetess advertising meetings and so forth. So let us move on. The first thing I encountered, it was not a lot of traffic, kind of low key. And this woman that was properly dressed with a head covering out here passing off tracts. Now, the 2 ladies were probably Adventists, probably the family of a delegate. They seemed more interested in shopping, fairly casual, pretty loose dress for a Seventh-day Adventist. So I was interested. Who's this lady passing out literature? So I went up and say, hey, hello, what do you got? And she seemed quite excited that somebody came to her. And I took a piece of the literature and I looked at it. And I recognized some icons that belonged to the original Shepherd's Rod, but this clearly was not an original Shepherd's Rod track. And I said, well, so I saw the cover of it, and I said, oh, is this related to the Shepherd's Rod? And she was a little surprised that I recognized it. Well, how do you know that? And I said, well, these symbols come from the original Shepherd's Rod, but what's this thing? Oh, well, this is added light or whatever. Well, it turns out that she is a branch Davidian. One of several I met, and I'll talk more about them. And at that point, I recognized that this was not the original shepherd's rod. This is a counterfeit. And of course, this is one of the universal confusions thrown out, that Branch Davidians are the successor of the original shepherd's rod. This is patently false. We're going to be out there to explain to people that the Branch Davidians are a counterfeit movement that can clearly be shown to be contrary to the original shepherd's rod and Seventh-day Adventist doctrine. For example, they believe in the literal keeping of feast days, Pentecost, Passover, Feast of Tabernacles, and so forth. They also believe that the Holy Spirit is feminine. I mean, this is ridiculous, but that's some of the things that come from the branch trajectory. So one of the things that is the problem is people are told things that aren't true, and they don't know the difference between the two groups. And so we'll be out there with literature and papers to explain and document the clear distinction. This is something that the academia and the church leaders have failed to do, and I think they want to discredit the original shepherd's rod by attaching it to this counterfeit movement started by Ben Roden in 1955. So we will be there with papers to explain that to people, that no, this is not part of the original. Now, to a Seventh-day Adventist, they're not going to know this. They think, oh, they're all offshoots. Well, there are going to be offshoots out there, sure enough. But you got to be able to say, well, who's the right one and who's a counterfeit? So that's part of our purpose on this channel, is to make a distinction. That paper about true Davidian versus a branch, if you're interested, you can, at the end of this, I'll have a link to where you can contact me, and I'll be happy to share that paper to you, PDF electronic version. And we'll make, we're going to be handing it out on the street for anybody that's interested. Now, here's the same woman. These two gentlemen that approach her look like delegates. This is not a Sabbath, so they're there, dressed in casual attire, but clean cut. The one guy with the tie on, you can see part of, he's carrying his badge. He shouldn't be wearing his badge out on the street, but he's clearly a delegate. And so they're there for the official church business. There's going to be about 2,800 or over 2,800 delegates from around the world. So we look forward to interacting with them and finding out what's on their hearts. What do they think about these issues in the church? Are they afraid to talk about it? I know that the agenda is very controlled in the business session, so they will not be able to take the microphone and propose something because the experience shows you from 2022 that Jonathan Zirkle, the lawyer, tried to bring up a petition as a delegate, and he was shut down by the president, Ted Wilson. So all that information's out there on the internet if you want to find it. So it'll be interesting to interact with delegates and find out what they're thinking about these things. And that's the purpose. The real action here, friends, is going to be on the street. Okay, here's another guy. Didn't recognize him, but he's out there with a little billboard and some kind of literature, giving me a good look. And I went up, talked to him. And it was interesting as he was approached by the guy in the suspenders and the blue T-shirt. And it's a small world in Seventh-day Adventism. The man there, his name was Jack. I can't remember, but I knew him from when I was teaching down at Southwestern in Keene, Texas in 2000. And he was there, or he found out that I began to study shepherd's rod. Okay, so now he's definitely anti-rod. He's warning this guy, oh, don't, that tall guy over there, beware, he's been bewitched by the shepherd's rod or whatever. But this was a small world. It just shows you that you'll never know who you'll meet. I even ran into the pastor that baptized me back in 1997. So, everybody's going to be there running around. So it's a good opportunity to mingle with people. And if the ones want to cause you trouble, you just avoid them. But they're standing there right in front of the parking structure. Now, the big draw for Adventists that are not there, the delegates and so forth, but their families and other Adventists that come in, is the exhibition area. This is the big show. This is where all the big money comes in, and this is all about marketing. Okay, all the ministries will be there, all the publishing houses, all the colleges, universities, you name it, and they're all there looking for money in one way or another. Now, there's some good stuff that is being sold there, but this is, like I say, this is a big spectacle. So I'll show you some pictures of that. This one is IAS. It's Adventist International Institute for Adventist Studies in the Philippines. And the reason I've been there in 2003 and 4. And so this is the theological seminary for the East. Okay, this is where all the theologians and the pastors get their training. So they had a booth there. So I've been there. I had some whole experiences with that place. That's a whole nother story. But that was their booth. Here is ADRA, one of the biggest displays. And you look what the whole goal is. You look at the top. Money, money, money. Now, we know they got busted taking millions and millions from U.S. aid, okay, government money. But yeah, the whole global mission is keep putting money in the pot so we can tip the scale and get our $400,000 or whatever. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of that, but they have a rather spectacular display. I mean, we're talking big money to put up this type of stuff. But yeah, they'll all be there. Peddling their good missionary works and trying to get people to open their checkbooks. This is a live television studio Hope channel. Okay, so, I mean, they got, you see the little girl, the makeup artist there setting her up. So, I mean, this is the high-end, high-dollar production stuff broadcasting out to the Adventist world during the session. So there's the Esperanza TV, that's the Spanish channel. So they got a lot of live studio work here. I mean, this is the high-end professional stuff. This is the inside that dome. This is the stage for the session. This is during the weekday, so there's not much here. Those chairs on the floor are where the delegates will be sitting. So this is probably in between session meetings. But, it's a big setup with screens and all that. Okay, here's back out on the street in front of that parking structure. These two gentlemen, I'm like, I don't know who these guys are. So I go up and they look like Adventists. And I go up and start talking to them and find out quickly. So my goal was to ID these people, find out who they are, what are they out there doing. They're clearly passing out literature, and I can tell you about them. The one older guy with the beard talking to the lady is a Branch Davidian named Doug Mitchell. Now, he is since deceased, and the other guy next to him is a man named Steve Penner. And I got to asking them questions about what they're teaching and believing. And once they figured out that I'm not your typical Adventist, that I knew something about the shepherd's rod, they got kind of defensive. But this Doug Mitchell claimed that he was a living prophet. I mean, that's one of the false theologies of the Branch Davidians is they think they have the living spirit prophecy. They always have to have a living prophet in the midst. So he was the embodiment of a, quote, living prophet in the spirit power of Elijah. And I'm like, well, either he's true or he's a counterfeit. And by their fruits you know them. You apply the Bible test to the law and the testimony. Speak not according to this. There's no light in them. So I applied some Bible tests, and he got a little angry and defensive when I started asking about certain teachings from the shepherd's rod, about the golden bull in Zechariah 4, about what the two pipes represent. And that's where I discovered that, there's something wrong with this guy. One of the things they were handing out for literature, of course, I went and talked to the people. I was polite and respectful, but I took all the literature they had. And he had this one tract called The Holy Family. And he told me, now, I mean, if this sounds strange, it should. Some red flags should go up. But he said that just like there's a family on earth, there's a family in heaven, and that Jesus has a sister. And I'm like, what? So they believe that the Holy Spirit is feminine and that Jesus was born of the Father, I guess, and the Holy Spirit. I don't know. But that Jesus also had a sister. There's a family up in heaven. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's reminds me when I was a youth, the Twilight Zone. I'm like, this is weird. But these guys were very serious. I mean, they believed it. But clearly I saw, okay, something's up. So you're going to encounter this. Now, a typical Adventist will think, oh, well, these are all offshoots, or this is all the Shepherd's. No, friends, you're going to find every independent ministry, every offshoot, and the original upshoot, the original divinity message, Shepherd's Rod message on the street. So how do you know who's who? Try the spirits, know what manner they're of. So, I mean, you can usually find out fairly quickly. So that was some interesting experience, and it doesn't get, so this is why it's real interesting what's on the street. Here they are talking with the woman who's a different branch of the Branch Davidians. So there's different factions. Turns out there were 3 different factions. So he's trying to probably convince her that he's the current prophet, and she's probably like, no, because she believes it's some other person, some woman. So they're having a little theological discussion there, which is always interesting. The other lady in the pink shirt was also a Branch Davidian. So these are what you see out on the street. I don't know what we'll expect this time, but okay, here's the famous arch. I didn't have a whole lot of time for sightseeing. I did do a little bit of walking around, but not a whole lot. I was more interested in what's going on, in this session. Now, when you get into that convention center, I mean, it's 2 levels, but all you see is a lot of people going around. Okay, and mingled in here, you will see big shots, church leaders. I think I remember recognizing, now they usually are quite busy, like the heads of some of these high-profile ministries will be, darting from their hotel rooms across the street into the convention center. And, of course, Adventists like to look up to nobility, and so they will have an entourage or a following or something around them. I never really approached these people, but, you can see them there. Sometimes they'll interact with people, but, a lot of people out there milling around. So a lot of opportunity to interact, meet friends, and socialize. Here's across the street, 3ABN had a huge, gigantic screen broadcasting live what was going on inside the session. Okay, and so this was, apparently they rented a space in that parking area. Here's a guy out front pushing some kind of literature or propaganda, for, I don't know who he was, but yeah, you'll see a lot of, now I'm sure 3ABN will be there this time, and now the technology 20 years later, everybody will be live streaming, but that's going on. This is a scene I wandered around, checked out. There were meetings in little rooms and all over, and I saw an advertisement for a meeting for youth or something. I went in. I was a little shocked. It basically reminded me of being in a bar room or a club scene. I used to dabble in the world stuff, and go to clubs and music clubs. And I was a little shocked to see this, but this guy was up there exhorting a lot of emotion and excitement. Needless to say, I didn't stay long. I did a quick exit, but this was, like I say, a gathering where the spirit was definitely rather worldly and a lot of excitement. So there are going to be a lot of decoys there, especially for the young people looking for something exciting. So those things will be there. If you have children, keep them close to your side. This is the first Sabbath. And you can see the floor is filled in the first tier. Quite a few people here. That stadium probably holds up close to 80,000 people. So I would say at this point, maybe half full or a little less. Maybe 30,000, maybe 35,000 at the most, the first Sabbath. In the big stage, of course, a lot of theater presentation, a lot of singing, and so forth. Adventist music ministries, they like to do a lot of show off there. So you'll have a lot of people being shown and singing and so forth during the Sabbath. Big stage. Like I say, there's a reasonable amount of people here, but not high capacity, not compared to the second Sabbath. So after the Sabbath service, people come out of that area. So there's a lot of people mingling around on the street. Now, this is the first Sabbath. So this is just some pictures of the people coming out on the street. Now, you see here in this scene, it's out on one of those exit areas. You see a lot of Adventists milling around. You see the one guy there in the blue shirt and the black pants, standing there with a bundle of literature in his arm. So he's out there handing out literature. Now, who's he? Okay, I'll show a picture of him. But, you go up and approach them. You have no idea who they are or what their message is. So I approach them. Hey, what are you handing out? What's your message? Are you Seventh-day Adventist, or what are you here for? And they'll be happy to usually tell you. Also, on the other end, underneath the hand on the walk sign, there is some ministers there from a Davidian group out of Waco with their literature. Okay, so there's a lot of I guess proselytizing or whatever. So here's one of these ministers. I knew this man. He'd studied with him, the Shepherd's Rod, back in Waco, Texas, or Keene, Texas, when I was teaching there. So I knew him personally. He's out there handing out literature, but this is their stuff. This is not original Shepherd's Rod. This is a amalgamation, a compilation stuff. So we're not in agreement with this, but they profess to be Davidians. You're going to, like I say, there are going to be different groups of Davidians, and they don't all see eye to eye. But they're out there interacting with Adventists, trying to, get their attention. That's the green area behind. A lot of people hang out under those trees. It is July. It is summertime, so it's a little hot out here. This is the guy handing out literature, and I got to talking to him. He's an anti-Trinitarian. Okay, he was with a ministry. I think I have a picture of their leader. But, they're a little cagey about what they're up to. But you can, a little discussion, you find out. And they are definitely an offshoot that will create trouble. I have told people, interacting with them, keep it focused. But they're like this one-horse show. They're focused on, the pioneers and the Adventist churches and apostasy, because it's teaching the idea of a three-person Godhead. And I'm like, they're wrong. But they're very militant, and they create a lot of trouble in Adventist churches, so they'll certainly be there on the street. Our advice to dealing with them is just, okay, hi, hello, what do you got? Take their literature and move on, but don't argue or debate with them. That's never productive. So here's once a scene, that area there, one of the major entrances and exits, a lot of people out wandering around, and this is the action on the street, so to speak. Lots of picture taking, and now today it will be a lot of video scripting. So this is a typical scene. This is on the first Sabbath. Get your picture with your friend, or maybe a celebrity figure in Adventism. Okay, so there's a lot of that going on. Now here's an interesting scene. This is right across from that area. What are we looking at here? Those two gentlemen in the foreground there are Davidians from the Waco group with their literature sitting there. And I think they're Caribbean island origin, Trinidad or Jamaica. So they're there. And then the guy in the white shirt and the black pants is, of course, the guy I showed you earlier, Doug Mitchell, the Branch Davidians. So he's there. So you're going to have all these different groups, stone's throw from each other. Here's a picture of that Doug Mitchell promoting his stuff. He's got a captive audience there, I guess. But how do you go up and tell people, hey, this guy's a counterfeit or his theology's wrong? That's up to everybody.'re going to have to sort this out. Who's speaking the truth? And then, of course, the other group, gentlemen there trying to pass out literature. Now, when you get there this time, we're going to have a whole different setup. This idea of standing there with a box of literature is one thing, but we're going to have some visuals that are going to really surprise people. The charts, the original charts, and that's what we found is most effective to gather people's attention so they can come up and start looking at that, and we can start talking about the Bible symbols. The current Sabbath school lesson, we're going to show visions in Zechariah 6, Daniel 2, to get an honest discussion about the meaning of symbols in the Bible, especially Daniel 2. Where's the stone come from? The mountain. What's the mountain a symbol of? Yeah, but Quarterly never explained it. So we'll be there with those visuals, those pictorial images to engage in conversation. That's the purpose. We'll also have some posters, so you might be surprised. But to get people to, stop and look and engage. Now, most people stream by, but the honest ones will stop, look, and those are the ones you can engage with. This is just showing you that people from African countries will show up in their native garb. And so you see some interesting, different cultures. And Adventist Church is quite diverse, as we know. Races, cultures, and tribes. We're a mixed, very diverse group, and this makes it interesting, I say, to interact with people. The African cultures tend to be more conservative, so they're opposed to women's ordination and LGBTQ stuff, so they're not as liberalized as North America. So it's fun to interact with the people from the different cultures. Okay, here is out of one of the exits. That gentleman there with the literature, he is a minister, I think, from the Waco group. So they were there on that Sabbath. So you have literally different groups, almost shoulder to shoulder. Okay, in this one, you see over there towards the right, you see the gentleman with the white shirt, black pants, the tie, and the white hat. I think his name was Stump, and he's a big writer and promoter of anti-Trinitarian stuff. I don't know if he's still alive, but he was the one behind, that one group, the anti-Trinitarians. I don't know if Adventists, will take the time, but it's like, hey, go check people out, see what's going on out there. Because the amazing thing is, despite all of this, different groups, God has the truth out there. The truth will be here on the street. But the devil's not going to stand idly by, so you're going to have all kinds of counterfeits on the left and right. This is why we need to know our Bibles, how to prove and try the spirits, what manner thereof. So you have to try all things. And so in interacting with these people, I'd been studying Shepherd's Rod. I knew what that was. But I'm like, okay, what do you have? Give it to me. Share it with me. Persuade me. And, once you recognize some red flags, you can say, okay, thank you, and move on. Okay, here is a group, that's from that Waco group. They showed up with a lot of people. They had these sisters here. You can usually tell a Davidian, the women will have head covering. Okay, now they're out there passing out these bags with free goodies. I'm not in agreement with what they pass out. None of it was the original Shepherd's Rod. It was all remodeled stuff. And so that's one of the things that distinguishes the group is we only stick to the original message, and we will have that in the pocket-sized tract. So these little bags with freebies and all that, no, that was their thing. Okay, on the last Sabbath, the gentleman standing against the wall and the other guy with the suit, they were two Davidians. I knew the one of them that came from another group in Salem, South Carolina, at the time under Don Adair. Now he's deceased. And then the others are Davidians from the Waco group. So there's two different Davidian groups here out on the street, I guess, interacting. The one with the beard leaning against the wall used to be with the Waco group, so they knew each other. So it makes life interesting. So this is, the Salem Davidian talking to a Waco Davidian. It's like I say, it's everybody will be there. This was a meeting held at a Holiday Inn, advertised by the Waco group, and they're trying to give a Shepherd's Rod study. But the irony, it looks like there's a room in the people. There was only one person there that was not a Davidian. Everybody else in that room was from Waco, so they really didn't have a good, it really wasn't very effective. I mean, they probably spent a lot of money to rent this room, but that one guy in the foreground on the left, he was the only one there that was investigating, okay? So we're not going to go to those expenses. We think the real action is interacting on the street for 30 seconds, a minute, or 5 minutes, or whatever, with the people face to face. This is the stage, I think the second Sabbath, early Sabbath school. Now, this is a sign that these Waco Davidians put up trying to get people to get their DVDs and come for a Bible prophecy seminar. I'll say this much. This is no good. This is a work of a foot. This is very amateurish and unprofessional. So we don't endorse that. If you're going to do some advertising, do it professionally, okay? but don't look like like a grade schooler that can't write straight on the board. So this is a standing rebuke to Waco Davidians that you should do better. Now, look at this. Before I tell you who this is, who's this guy? This is a man with this beard and his wife, and over on the left you see another man with a beard. These are another group of Branch Davidians. That man's name was Denton Brunken, and his son told me that the old man was Elijah the prophet. I said, really? And then I asked him, well, who's Victor Houteff? Oh, well, he's dead. We have to have a living prophet today. And that's classic branch theology. Okay? And so I said, well, that's interesting. So you got one branch, so I've got now my second living prophet, false prophet on the street. They're set up with their chair and their, and their dogs, and so they're making themselves comfortable, which is perfectly fine. But they're out there, and they are another faction of the branch with their own theology. So they don't agree with Doug Mitchell and the other guy. So this makes life interesting. But the son was not completely unashamed to say, oh, that's Elijah the prophet, the antitypical King David. And I'm like, I don't think so. But how do you know? And you got to study original shepherd's rod to know and be able to distinguish this. An Adventist would think, oh, this is all the shepherd's rod. No, it is not. This is a counterfeit branch faction. And then no sooner you turn around and there's this guy. And you're like, well, who's he? He is a breakaway from another Davidian group called Bashan Hill. And he himself claims that he's antitypical King David, Elijah the prophet. And I'm like, what? So now we've got three of them roaming around. I asked this guy, he's a very arrogant, talkative man, so I didn't really like dealing with him. But I asked him, I said, will you claim to be antitypical Elijah, King David? And I said, well, this guy right over here claims to be the same. And, he's and then he had trashed him. So you're talking about literally false prophets wandering all around. I studied and heard about false prophets, and the Bible warns us, but literally, how do you ID them on the street? Well, friends, they're going to be out there. I don't know what will be there in 2025, but I assure you there will be false prophets on the street, and you probably meet them face to face. How are you going to know who they are? Here's the key. You got to ID them. What's your message? What are you teaching? What do you publish? What do you have? And from that, by the fruit you'll know them, you can investigate and ID them fairly quickly. Now, all the literature I gathered from these people, I archived it, and later I got to it, but it could all be refuted according to the Bible standard, the test of our faith. This is a group of Waco Davidians. They got their sandwich board out there, but like I say, handwritten, I'd say rather sloppy, amateurish. But they're out there on the street corner. So every street corner, you're going to have some ministry setting up shop, so to speak. And here's the Waco group once again. They rolled up with the van, and they had like 80,000 pieces of literature. I asked them, I said, are you giving out any original shepherd's rod? And the answer is, no. So all of this stuff we consider uninspired dung. It's like a man compilation. And this is one of the things that impressed upon me. And I said, Lord, I know what the original is. Where is it? And nobody had it. So now 20 years later, we are going to show up and with the original literature. And I've showed this before, the pocket-sized tract literature. Okay, this stuff. We're going to be there on the street with this in quantity. And that's what we're told to publish. So here is the son of Elijah the prophet, one of them, handing out his literature on the Sabbath, And you think about the typical 70 Adventists, they're not going to know one from the other. So, friends, you better study the original and know for yourself. You'll be able to try the Spirit, know which manner thereof. Choose the good, refuse the evil. Now, this is the last Sabbath. What you'll get is these buses coming in. And buses, how many people get on a bus? But people will be pouring out of these buses. So this last Sabbath, that stadium, as you'll see here in a minute, will be packed. Now you see, like I say, people come in by the hordes, okay? And much more, like I say, this is a big show. So that last Sabbath, like I say, you will get upwards of more than 70,000 people packed in that stadium. And when they come out, yeah, it's a big scene. So that concludes our slideshows. Some of the things you might expect to see on the street. This was 20 years ago, but I hope that gives you a perspective for those that will be attending is, don't put your blinders on. Go interact. And when you're on the street and you see people standing there with the original charts, okay, take a moment. Go talk to them. Take some literature. Free without cost or obligation. But the point is to have a discussion, because ultimately God is going to take the reins in his own hands. There is a remedy for all the crises in the church. The session will not deal with it. The leadership is very top down. They're going to control the agenda. So the appeal here to the Seventh-day Adventists, the delegates, and so forth, are you willing to hear the voice of God knocking at the door? Jesus will be here. He'll have representatives, but you got to sort through this maze of counterfeits. But I submit that that will be a blessing. If you take the effort, you'll be able to choose the good, refuse the evil, and have an interaction. And in the purpose of doing that, you don't get into arguments or debates with people. You just invite them. Here, come, see, check this out. So I hope you found this useful, informative. If you're interested in that paper discussing and documenting the difference between a true Davidian and the counterfeit branch, check that link in the description box here. You can either email us or call, text, or connect with us on WhatsApp at that number, and we'll be happy to send you a copy of that document without cost or obligation. If you're on the street in St. Louis, then we'll have some print copies, or we'll be happy to get that to you or explain any difference if you go through it and you have questions. That's part of the reason, is we're not hiding anything. We're clear what this message is and what its purpose is, and we'll be there to dispel any misconceptions. Like I say, a lot of the accusations, Davidians are separatists. No, we did a video on that recently. Or Davidians believe this and that. And I'm like, no, we don't call the church Babylon, and we can prove it. Here's the literature. And challenge people, say, well, if you can show me a statement in the original literature that says that, then I'll give you $1,000. I made that challenge on a YouTube video, okay? Because it's not there. So the honest, seeking for truth and righteousness, will see through the deception. And so it should be an interesting time. For those that will be there, like I say, this is a life-changing event. I believe the potential for this session could be on the magnitude equal or greater to the 1888 session, because that message that was brought and was rejected by leaders returned to the church after 40 years in 1930, and it will be knocking on the church today, how many decades later? In 2025. So God means business. The message is not going to go away. The truth will stand, and so please investigate for yourself, and don't lean on the arm of flesh and to cease from all men whose breath is in his nostrils. So until we meet again, Godspeed.